Hey everybody. So I'm really excited to pair up with T-Bone. We're going to talk about rare heroes today as far as who I think my top 10 favorite purple rares are. So I'm really excited to go through this list with you. We're going to talk about each hero, what they do, how I personally love them and where I use them the most. And he's going to eventually rank them up against other rares that other content creators have chosen. So this is a really exciting partnership, and I'm super glad that I was able to do this with him. So let's go ahead and let's talk about my top 10 favorite purple rares. All right, so at number 10, I have Hadrian. Now, Hadrian is from the Desert Nomads faction, and he is considered an attacker mage. I do like to use him specifically in war, which you're going to see that's pretty much what I use all of my rare purples for. Let's talk about his special skills. So first up, we have Dark Embrace, and at maxed out, he has 330% attack on a single enemy and a chance to inflict silence for 4 turns. So I'm loving him because of his silence. I do like that he is a damage dealer and also has the ability to silence a single hero. Now for his passive, it's called Energy Burst, and he gains 50 mana for every negative status he inflicts. Now, it's kind of misleading a little bit. He can only inflict 1 negative status because it's to a single enemy, but every time he does inflict that, he does gain 50 mana, and then his mana gain is increased by 1. So he could potentially be firing pretty often and just kind of silencing, which that, of course, is that they cannot fire their special skill. Now for his awakening levels, you're going to see that it is critical damage that gets increased. So he can be a pretty solid damage dealer with that 330% attack as maxed, and then his critical damage increased each time he goes up. So I like him. I don't use him as often as some of these other heroes, but I do have him as my number 10 slot. So let's see who's next. All right, at number 9, we have Meredith. Meredith is also going to be from the Desert Nomads faction, and she is considered a specialist healer. I do have a couple healers on this list because they're always nice for war. I do like her specifically for a couple of reasons. So her special skill is called Premise of Survival, and with that max, she restores 20% health point to all allies. And then she grants increased defense to all allies for 3 turns. Now, increased defense is fantastic, especially if you want that kind of longevity of your team. So I really like that for her. As far as her special goes, it is the max health point of each ally. So for her passive, it's called Healthy Attitude. And maxed out, she has speed increased by 30 if she's at 100% health point. So her speed to begin with isn't that terrible. If you can get her really fast, she's going to be in that turn bar quite often. And if she's at 100% health, her speed does increase. So I really like her for that because you can make her a really fast hero. And we all know that speed, especially for war, is huge. Now, as far as her awakening, her special that does get increased is defense. That goes up 20% both at 3 and 6, as with all rares. And defense is great for your support heroes. I do like to do kind of a combination of health point and defense for my support heroes because I want to keep them alive. So that is number 9 is Meredith, and I think she's a really solid rare to have on your team. Now, some of these get a little tricky as far as how I ranked them, but there are some nitpicky things I have about Arthur specifically that put him at number 8. First off, he is in the Dark Followers faction, and he is considered a specialist healer. I don't like him necessarily for the healing aspect. It's his passive that I really like him for. So his special ability is called Calming Incantation, and he restores 13% of the target's maxed HP to all allies. So that's each ally getting 13% of their max health point, which, I mean, it's solid. It's not like a super fantastic amount, but like I said, with him, I like his passive specifically. So that is called Unrestrained Ambition. And with this, every time he fires his special, he has a chance to inflict sleep for 1 turn on all enemies. And maxed out, he has a 25% chance to use his special ability twice. So I find him to be a really interesting hero to use because you are getting a healer and also somebody that is going to inflict that sleep. So for war, I really enjoy using him. And every once in a while, you know, that 25% chance to fire twice, he can really kind of put a damper on the opponent. So I like that about him quite a bit. He is going to get his resistance increased. And this is one of those nitpicky things that I have. I wish that it was accuracy, personally, because you do want that chance to inflict sleep to land as often as possible. So I personally wish that his awakening level, instead of being resistance, was accuracy. And then he is also a health point leader in rifts. So if you're kind of lower level, you can sort of beef up your team a little bit as far as using them in rifts with this. So there you have number 8. That is Ardor. And again, it's just because I had some little nitpicky things that I would want to be kind of tweaked about him to make him higher on the list. All right, at number 7, we have Caleb. Now, Caleb is from the Slavs faction, and he is considered a tank bruiser. Now, I really like him just because he's just a solid hero all around. So for his special, it is called Defensive Stance. He gains Taunt for 4 turns and gains Spell Shield for 4 turns. So I love that combination because with Taunt, you're going to kind of want to have him be sort of the target that is going to get hit. And with Spell Shield, you're going to be able to eliminate some of those negative status throwers that are pretty common. For his passive, it's called Iron Will. His defense is increased by 19% for every positive status affecting him. So you're going to want to pair him with some sort of hero that is going to throw some positive statuses on him, that, you know, like a different support hero, because the higher his defense, the better he is going to be for that taunt position. Now, as far as his awakening goes, his resistance is increased, which I do like that about him, because when his spell shield is gone after those 4 turns, or after the 4 negative statuses that he receives, he still is going to have a high resistance. So he can kind of, hopefully, if his resistance is high enough, he's going to be able to counteract, well, not really counteract, but not receive as many negative statuses. So I put him at number 7. He's not like the most incredible hero ever, but I do think that he's a really solid hero to have on your roster because of that taunt. Taunt heroes are super fantastic for war. All right, at number 6, we have, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Yazna. She is from the Slavs faction and is an attacker mage. I love her, and I think it's because of the name of her special skill. So it's called Sleep Sweetheart. Now, I'm from the South, and anytime someone is called Sweetheart, it's always a negative connotation. So it just makes me giggle that that's her special. But with that, she deals damage to all enemies, which is 28% of her current health point, and a chance to inflict sleep on all enemies for 1 turn. So you guys know that I do love my HP-based hitters, and that I love sleep or stun or silence or anything that's going to kind of cause the enemy to not be able to fire their specials or to gain mana or any of those types of things. So I love her for that. And then her passive is called Exuberant Personality. With this, her accuracy is increased by 35% if she's at 100% health point, and her mana gain is increased by 1. So you can really build her to have a lot of health and a lot of her accuracy. And then as far as her awakening levels go, her health point is what gets increased for those specials with that. So she is a really solid damage dealer, and I love using her in war, specifically against those like double and triple resurrect teams, because of the fact that she deals damage to all enemies and has the ability to potentially land sleep on them as well. So it was really hard to kind of figure out where to put her in the ranking, but she did land at number 6 for me, just because of her chance to inflict sleep was only for 1 turn, and I wish that it had been more than that. But she's really solid to have on your roster for war. All right, at number 5, I have Gunvet. He is from the Iron Clans, and he is a tank guardian. Now, I know you guys are probably like, you have already had a taunt hero. Why are you putting another one in here? I personally just like him a little better than Caleb. So his special skill is called Battle Cry, and with this, he recovers 15% of his health point, gains taunt for 3 turns, and increased resistance for 3 turns. So I really like the fact that he does recover that health point first. I think that kind of sets him up just a little bit higher as far as being a taunt hero, separated from Caleb. His passive is called Increased Motivation. And with this, his defense is increased by 15% and resistance is increased by 30% if below 30% health point. I know that's a lot of words, but basically, if he's below 30% health point, his defense and his resistance are increased. And I think that's really valuable, especially for a taunt hero, that when he gets below a certain percent of his health point, he's going to gain a couple of things that kind of make him a little beefier. As far as his awakening level, his defense is what gets increased. And I kind of like this because it balances out his recovering 15% health point from his special skill. So with this, you can kind of really make him a really strong hero by incorporating both HP and defense into his artifacts. So that as far as being a taunt hero, his longevity, I think, is a little bit stronger than someone like, say, Caleb. So that's why I have him at number 5. All right, at number 4, I have Stanko. I know this could potentially be a really controversial standing as far as having him this high on the list. There are other heroes that I use more for different aspects of the game. But for him, I use him every single time I hit the yellow raid boss. He is on that team. And when I first started, I had him as my arena speed leader for a while. And that helped me out a lot as a newer player to really get him in there. So his special skill is called The Gods Will Decide. And he has a 100% chance to grant increased attack to all allies for 5 turns. And a 50% chance to inflict decreased attack on all enemies for 5 turns. So that is... decreased attack doesn't sound like it's really all that exciting, but if you have increased attack and they have decreased attack, that can really be a killer combination. And then for his passive, it's called The Gods Have Decided. With this, when he dies, he uses his special ability and then grants 75 mana to all allies. So every single time he dies, he's going to grant increased attack, have a chance to do decreased attack on the enemy, and then give 75 mana to all allies. So I'm sure you guys have already figured out why I like him on my team. There's been some videos out on different ways to hit the raid boss. So like I said earlier, I do love that he is a speed leader for the arena. I think for beginner players, he's a pretty accessible hero to have. And being able to get that speed lead in the arena can really give you a boost as far as being able to fill up your cabinet just a little bit quicker. So, like I said, I do have him here because of the fact that I use him on every single yellow raid boss. So as far as his awakening level goes, it is accuracy, which I do like because as far as his special, that 50% chance to land decreased attack, we want to get that boosted up as much as possible. So there's, as people like to call him, good old Stinky Stanko, and I have him at number 4 on my list because I use him at least once a week on my raid boss team, and then if I have it over the weekend, I use him for that as well. All right, at number 3, I have Gorak. Now, Gorak is another one that I use for the yellow raid boss, but I also use him in war all the time. So he is from the Iron Clans, and he is considered a tank bruiser. He's just kind of an all-around beast, and we'll talk about the way that his special skill and his passive kind of combine to make him be an insanely strong hitter. First, with his special, it is called Frenzy. With this, he does deal damage to himself for 30% of his health point, but then he deals damage to 367% attack to a single enemy, and he ignores 40% defense. So that is a huge amount of attack for a rare. I have personally found that heroes that harm themselves typically could be some of the stronger heroes. Like if you think about Akuma, for instance, the lower his health point goes, the harder he hits. So he, with that ignoring 40% defense, it's huge. Now his passive is called Orc Angry. And with this, his attack is increased by 8% for every 10% missing health point. So that is insane. So he damages himself for 30%. So you know you're going to get 8% times 3 already from the beginning of that. So his damage can be absolutely insane. And I use him for the yellow raid boss, and I use him in war. Now his awakening levels, it is critical damage that gets increased. So if you can get his crit rate to 100%, and then just hammer away, getting that attack and his critical damage up, he can absolutely be an insane hitter for you. I love using him. It is kind of tricky to keep him at a low percent of health and him not die, but to me, he's absolutely worth it, and I use him on that yellow raid boss every week. So that's why he's at number 3. All right, at number 2, we have Varfus. Now, I did do a video of him specifically not too long ago about waiting entirely too long to level him up, and he's become obviously one of my favorite rares to use. So I love him for a couple different reasons. He's very unique. So as far as his special skill, it is called Headbutt. He deals damage based on 34% of the caster's max health point. And again, you know I love those health point based heroes. But this one is the killer. He has a chance to inflict stun for 6 turns. 6, which is bananas. He also inflicts decreased defense and speed on himself for 6 turns. So kind of in a similar fashion to Gorak, you're going to have him where he does hurt himself, but to get that 6 turn stun and then his health point damage, it's totally worth it. So his passive ability is Crippled Toughness. With that, he does his defense is increased by 250 for every negative status affecting him. So if he fires a special, you know that he's going to automatically have 2. He's going to have that decreased defense and decreased speed. So that's going to make his defense increase by 250 for each one. So that's pretty cool. And then his mana gain is increased by 2, which is a lot higher than other heroes, and he definitely needs that. So with his awakening level, it is accuracy that is increased, which I do love, because that way you can have it to where you can focus on his health point and then also his accuracy to get that stun to land, because again, 6 turns is just absolutely insane. So because he has the highest turn amount for stun and the fact that his mana gain is increased by 2, I think that he is an extraordinary rare hero to have on your arsenal. All right, and at number 1, I have Richard. I personally think that Richard is absolutely crucial to have on your roster. I have several that are maxed, and I use them all during war because I typically can fight in those rare fights, and I think he's insane to have. So his special is called Leech Therapy. With this, he restores 19% health point to all allies, and then he grants Spell Shield to all allies for 3 turns. Now that Spell Shield is absolutely crucial for rare wars because you're going to see that you're fighting a lot of Inulas. Specifically, that she's the one that comes to mind. I always want to bring a Richard in to keep her from putting me to sleep. So he's like my Inula killer. His passive is called Celestial Armor, and he has 5% decreased damage taken for every positive status he has. So that's pretty cool. So every single positive status that he gets, he's going to receive 5% less damage. So I like that because you can build him to be really strong and have a lot of longevity. And then with his awakening levels, he does get resistance maxed out. I do like this because if his spell shield doesn't land or isn't there as often, he still is going to have that high resistance. So that way he can hopefully receive less negative statuses and be able to kind of stay alive and functioning for your team. So I think that he is a really solid support hero to have. Like I said, I have several Max Richards and I use them all every war. So I think that he is super important to have, and that is why I have him ranked at number 1. Because as far as support heroes go, he is absolutely amazing. All right, so there you have it. That is my top 10 list for purple rares. Leave any comments or questions you have, and we can discuss maybe if you would change the ranking or if there are any heroes you think that I should have included in my list or that I should have taken off my list. And thank you guys, as always, for watching. I really appreciate your support, and stay tuned for T-Bone to put our rares up against each other and see who ends up ranked first. Thank you guys so much. You all have an amazing day.